Всем еще раз добрый день.
So once again, good afternoon. We have a roundtable that is dedicated to the topic smart logistics and talking about smart logistics in the framework of the fifth Global Fishery Forum. We'll be talking about the logistics of fish products and fish reserves. Fish as a product in logistics, what does that mean? Let's view fish from this point of view, because it's quite a capricious product in terms of the storage and transportation, and freezing is one of the most widespread type of the conservation of fish, and transporting it from the place where it was produced to the end user is faced with a certain difficulty. And we see the slowing down of fermentation and other physical processes, and significant changes can happen in fish when it is been frozen for the second time, and it is due to the humidity and small crystals with ice. When there are the vacillation in temperature, even if it is the change of 1 degree, it turns into a large crystal structure, and of course it decreases the quality of fish. So when we freeze it for a second time, the tissue is broken, and when the temperature is increased, and when we see some volatile temperatures, the fat is oxidized and it worsens the smell and the taste of food. And that is why, according to the regulation, it is not acceptable to transport fish with temperatures higher than minus 18 degrees. So you catch fish in the ocean, you have to freeze it when minus 18 is what we see in the ocean, in the forest, in carriage or in a container, the same temperature, in a refrigerator, the same temperature. So this is the right logistical chain that should be in place when we are transporting and delivering fish. It is what we call a continuous freezing chain. And today, in the framework of our Smart Logistics Roundtable, we will be talking about new approaches to the logistics and the construction of fish vessels and new fleet, the transportation and logistics, and also ensuring the high quality of fish and also new developments. We have 12 speakers with us today, 1 hour and a half, so 5-6 minutes per person. And before we start discussing the above-mentioned issues, I'd like to note that the current situation with logistics in Russia, Mr. Hassan Likhov, Deputy Head of Federal Agency for Fisheries. I'd like to ask you about this situation. Could you please describe that? You should not necessarily come to the tribune. You can do that from your seat. Good afternoon. Dear colleagues, Mikhail Yurievich, we all know that the fish market is developing quite dynamically, and it sets certain requirements, the speed of logistics, and of course we set very high requirements in terms of how the delivery should be done, should be mastered, and what this chain should look like overall in our segment. We can see 3 main stages in organizing this logistics, from the fish production point to the transit point or to the end point sometimes, and from the transit point, the storage in a refrigerator. Then the transshipment takes place with the railway transport or by car, by ship to the distribution wholesale point. Then it is mixed with all the other products. And from the point of view of this production logistics, there are three approaches. The first one is the marine sea transport. This is the major part of fish logistics. The second part is the railway part, and we also see that the transportation by car is also developing. As for sea transport, I'd like to specifically talk about the Northern Sea route, and we will talk about it in detail a little bit later. As for logistics, internally, domestically, two main basins, the Far Eastern and the Northern one. The main volume of production takes place there, so we export primarily from those two basins. If we talk about the Far East, we should specify the remoteness of this region. China, South Korea and Japan. Overall, this basin accounts for about 70% of the volume of production, and the export is the highest. It is at the highest rate there into those Asian countries that I have already mentioned. So, from the point of view of logistics, the main part is the transportation by sea. As I've mentioned before, now more and more cars and trucks are also used for this purpose. Of course, there are certain problems that need to be addressed, and we will talk about them. The Northern Basin accounts for about 10% of the production. Traditionally, the export markets used to be the UK, Europe, and the US. And of course, the largest share was for the sea transport. As for domestic internal transportation, the Far East it is by railway, and in the Northern Basin it is by car. So that is what the logistic chain looks like. Well, there was also a question about how you evaluate the prospects for the development. Just briefly, well, in general, I need to say that taking into consideration the pandemic and the sanctions that were exposed, the logistical chain have changed dramatically. From the point of view of COVID pandemic, the China example is the most illustrative one. They introduced the limitations, the constraints in that they changed the way they received fish, and they wanted only refrigerated containers to come into China, and there were certain requirements to the processing, and of course it affected the cost, the speed of the delivery, and we all saw that the export volume dropped significantly in 2021. Talking about the sanctions, the limitations that we have faced, the Northern Basin is the more illustrative one. And we all know that the end market for crab was used to be the US, and we all know that the sanctions that were imposed, the bans that were introduced, made them look for new markets, and there was a need for reorientation for the Asian countries, Asian Pacific market, and of course the chain became longer, the cost has increased, the speed also has increased, and it had to be adapted, taken into consideration the tastes of the new population, of the new markets. And I need to say that generally some sanctions imply direct ban. The US, Switzerland, and the European Union, companies that are working in those countries, large cargo companies, they notified us that they were leaving the Russian market Myers Company is one of the examples what happened. It is not only a large transporter, but a large cargo owner, container owner, and we lost a large share of fleet of refrigerator container, and of course it increased the cost of the freight, and it has had its toll on the logistics and the equipment that we needed for logistic purposes. And generally, we see that the industry is adapting quite fast, and logistical chain have switched into the Eastern Asia, and we see also, it is confirmed by the Federal Customer Service, and Russia is among the 10 leading countries. It ranked 7th in fish transportation, and overall, even taking into consideration all the difficulties and unprecedented sanctions, the export volumes have not dropped quite dramatically. The chains have been adapted, and if we compare this period to the last year, it has grown by 13%. Of course, there are certain difficulties that we are facing, but we are trying to overcome them. I'd like also to clarify certain aspects. Traditionally, we see that domestic transportation are basically done by railway. It is well known, and the largest share, about 90%, is from the Far Eastern field, from the region, from those regions into the central part of Russia, the Urals, and Siberia. This year, if we compare the same period to the last year, we have transported about 17 to 20% more than we did last year. I'd like to remind you that Rosrubelovstvo put forward a new initiative with a new transportation tariff, and according to this mechanism, the Sельхоз is administering, and they have already transported about 127,000 tons. And of course, it has given an impetus, and this growth was due to those support measures that were taken. It is well known that Russian railways have mobilized the throughput capacity. Per day, it is about 600 tons from the Far East, and the possibility to deliver that to more than 70 points. And as for the speed, it is about 1,000 to 1,200 kilometers. And it is what allowed us to have this growth that I have mentioned before. As for the growth points and the problems, I'd like to talk about it together. Getting back to the Northern Sea route, we see that as a very good growth point, and the fishermen over the last years, we all know some positive examples for the transportation of fish products. This year, we've registered the cabotage line, and in both directions, into the east, 1,000 tons have been transported from the east to the west. It was Pollock transportation. Of course, there are some problems with the insufficient development. However, this transport corridor is in demand, and we see a very good potential that needs to be unlocked. But overall, the history here is quite good, and taking into consideration the information that we have, the navigation period should last for at least 4 months, and we should ensure about 600,000 tons in both directions. And of course, in order to develop that, we need to develop the coastal infrastructure. Currently, it is underdeveloped. First of all, it is about port facilities. We need to comply with their hydraulic requirements, and we also need certain levels of depth that should be there for specific types of vessels. So we need to do that, and we need to ensure the possibility of transshipment, and we need to build state-of-the-art freezing facilities and also transport junction for the cargoes to go further. So we need to do this work, and the ruling of the government has been issued for the development of the Northern Sea route, and the subsidies have been allocated for this purpose, and also in order to attract and to have more cargoes there. If you allow me, I understand that I'm running out of time, but just 1 minute and a half. The railway potential has not been fully unlocked, but it has given us quite a good growth, and we have put forward an initiative together with the Ministry of Agriculture. We talked about expanding the stock list of items that can be delivered from the Far East, and this salmon and pink salmon can be included into this stock list, and it will give us more opportunities. But as always, it is about finding financing and funding, and hopefully we will be able to resolve it in the nearest future. As for the problems, what you have already mentioned, the statistics shows us, and the representatives of the Russian railways, about 25%, according to our information, is being transported in the cross sections, and it is about the conservation and the preservation of the freezing line, preserving this temperature at this level. So this is the first task that needs to be tackled in this line for this delivery. And the second issue is the speed of the cargo transportation. Of course, we all know that it takes certain time, and business processes are such that the batches that are already ready sometimes need to be changed. The volumes do change. You need to adapt that to the schedule of transportation. So we need to make those mechanisms more flexible ones. As for the growth and for the future growth, as I've mentioned before, more and more cargoes are being transported by car, and it is seen as a priority also from the Far East, and companies are preparing their own refrigerator car fleet. But together with that, if talking about the export, and Mr. Petrovich has been mentioning that we need to tackle the problems that exist at the border points, and it takes a lot of time to cross the border, to fill in the declaration, and talking about the smart logistics and all organizational questions, issues. We do spend a lot of efforts and time on that, and overall, that is how I see this situation. Mr. Likhov, thank you. You mentioned 20%. You mentioned the refrigerator segment, I think. Yes, thank you. So the catch is processed right on board the ship or is transported to the coast. And today we'll be talking about the one that is being processed on board the vessel. I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Sennikov, Deputy PR Specialist from Canal Retro. And he will be talking about the processing of the fish catch on board the vessels. Please, the floor is yours. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I will try to be brief in describing the situation with the fish production. For me, the production, the manufacturing that takes place on board, and what the situation looks like right now. The next slide, please. So a few words about our company, Roundtable, the largest holding in Russia. We produce fish reserves in the far east of Russia and the west of Russia. We have about 40 fish vessels, and we have the largest part of those products processed on board the vessel, and we are continually improving our processes. And currently, the fish vessel is not just the vessel that catches the fish. It is a very complicated, complex technological device, and we install special hubs for fish processing, the ready-made products, some products that are further on transported. And the state-of-the-art vessels that will be catching and producing fish in the nearest future will look like this. They will not look like the old vessels. We also build them. I will later on show you 3 projects that we are currently executing. The trawler length, about 80 meters. This is for the Far East. The next slide, please. Also, Yaroslavl. This is for the Far East, for the halibut and the cod, and more traditional trawler type, also for the Far East. And the next slide, just for you to understand what the production process looks like, the catch of the cod, then all the other procedures that take place on board, on the table, the strict control over what is happening with these products, the weighing, also labeling, marking, and also ready-made products then are stored on board. So this is what it looks like, what we are lifting on the board, but there are certain constraints and limitations, and the captain knows that he has a target catch to comply with, for example, the pollock in the Far East, and sometimes when you process more, then the texture is of lower quality. The next slide, please. This is the example of cutting the head off, state-of-the-art equipment that is used for this purpose, and that is why people working on such ships have extensive work experience, and the smooth of those teams, the work of those teams is quite smooth.
So, fillet is produced automatically, and then the concept of the company is to switch over to making use of all the catch. Each kg should be utilized to either produce food or for other purposes. Another photo of a fillet, nice fillet, and we believe that before putting the fish on board and till the packed fillet is placed into the freezer, not less than 6 hours pass, and after deforestation, the quality remains high. Here are the examples of the work done on the table, and the remains are used for mincing or for fabrication of forage or other purposes. And we pack a fillet of the pieces of different weight. It's convenient for restaurant. Freezing as an important phase. It takes 2.2 hours to freeze it till the temperature of minus 22 degrees, and that's the mode it is preserved aboard a ship. As a result, that's the food, that's the fish and the products that we produced in packaging. We use it in bags, and the range of the products is different, more than 40 different types of fish, and the seafood, and the assortment is large, and we also produce fish oil and flour, etc. That's the product that is aboard a ship. And then it is necessary to do the transshipment in the sea and take it ashore, and to further transport it. And it is very important that the temperature is kept, because if it is defrosted, the changes are irreversible, and it could make the quality worse. Thank you. Thanks a lot, and it's clear.
Муку мы сейчас не касались, потому что мы говорим про промороженную рыбную продукцию.
We are primarily talking about the frozen sea. We have many ships that produce.
И на этих то же самое, да. И на этих судах будет производиться мука.
And it will be making fish meal as well, especially fish flour, especially in the Far East. We have special purpose ships, and there was a lot of fish meal that was consumed in Russia because there's a high demand for it. Somebody is talking from the floor, but no microphone is used, so the interpreter cannot hear. We are pressed for time, so let's have all the Q&As at the end. You're absolutely right. Thanks for the question, but I suggest that we have a Q&A session at the end. Still, the person from the floor insists on asking a question and receiving an answer, but no microphone is used. There's a special equipment that is used to fabricate fish meal. Okay, thank you. We have everything. Still, the person is from the floor keeps talking. Okay, the participants of the round table, and I just didn't made the plan. First, we have the fabrication. We are talking about the links of the logistics chain, and starting from fabrication till it's taken to the end user. I would like to give floor to from the Nizhny Novgorod.
Говоря о перспективах развития рынка морских транспортных рефрижераторов и продолжении темы логистики.
Talking about the subject matter of the smart logistics, I would like to present our experience.
Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. На сегодня мы являемся оператором 11 транспортных
We
рефрижераторов.
operate 11 refrigerators. The total dead weight is 4 million cubic feet. We haul 5,000 tons of frozen fish per year. The major routes are as follows. the offloading takes place in the Okhotsk Sea, then it is taken all the way to the ports of the Far East, Petropavlovsk, Kamchatsky, Pusan, and Tsingtao of China, Dalian of China. I would like to give you a few data of statistics. In 2000, there were 2,000 refrigerators. As of now, there are 568. And there is a switch to transporting food in refrigerated. And only 50 ships were launched since 2000, and it is an indication that in January 2000 there were 2,558, but if we subtract the certain number, then 510 are remaining. 319 out of this amount have the crab jets, and they are used for the transshipment of the fish in the sea. And 76 of those are employed in the Far East. So 20% of the refrigerating fleet is located in Russia, and at that, the average age of the fleet in the world is 31 years. And the average age of the fleet in the Far East is 33.5 years. We can claim that in some 5-10 years, we won't be able to take the fish from the catching ground, because the ships more of age of more than 35 years could get faulty, and it will affect the quality. And if the trends persist, the average age of the ships, of the vessels, will be 40 years in a few years, and the number of the refrigerators will go down as well. Talking about the prospects and the possible solutions, there is only one way out, is building new fleet with the triple fuel consumption. That would make it possible for these ships to be operated. And they say that ships have high seasons, and it is possible to haul it only in the summer. And the new types of ships will be navigating the Northern Sea route. However, it is necessary to address a few issues to implement it. The most important thing is the following. The profitability of the haulage does not make it possible for the business to address this issue on their own. Another thing is the prospect of the development of the shipbuilding industry. We cannot build some 50 refrigerator vessels. That's why in Russia, that's why the program should have provisions to build the ships at the foreign shipyards. We understand that's a difficult solution. The disadvantages are clear, but if the decision is not taken before 2030, there'll be no entity capable of processing ship at sea.
Видим следующий выход из сложившейся критической ситуации.
So, the way out of the critical situation, as we see it, we need long-term loans, incentives as far as interest rates are concerned, long-term up to 20 years, the participation of the Russian suppliers and contractors of not less than 30%, and the possibility of construction abroad and then
Но мы в свою очередь, как бизнес,
fitting in Russia. We
предоставить
as a
долгосрочные
business are ready to
а также суда в залог.
provide long-term contracts with the
Если мы говорим про умную логистику, то в первую
producing
очередь
companies. If we are talking about smart logistics, first of all, we should invest into the infrastructure, and namely construction of the new fleet. In the future, it will make it possible to build the continuous refrigerating chain.
рассказать про транспортно-рефрижераторный рынок, поэтому
That's what I meant to say about the refrigerator market. Yes, sad. Thanks.
Давайте, как мы договорились в конце всего, я вас очень прошу, мы просто...
I just beg you and plead with you to ask the questions in the end. So we catch a fish, we process it and take it ashore. And then another issue is storing it and keeping it and taking it to the user. And I give floor to the Vladimir Walter, CEO of Serograska terminal. Sanctions introduced changes into the operational activities. The terminal was quite effective and traditionally, the refrigerator ships, the products were taken all the way to China, and during the pandemic, there were a lot of strict constraints imposed by China. That's why the products were taken to Petropavlovsk, Kamchatsky. Talking about the infrastructure, of course, it calls for the development, and we can say how many facilities and capacities were built in the last 5 years. We can say that there were only 3 refrigerators built in the Far East, one in Serograska, another one in Vladivostok port, and another one in the port of Artem. 4 or 5 years ago, the Federal Fishery Agency made a research of the deficiency of shortage of capacity in the Far East, and it was calculated to make the transshipment efficient. Not less than 200,000 tons capacity is needed. It is right now, it is 25,000 tons on top of it. As you can see, the shortage is quite huge. Taking into account that the logistics routes are changing today, taking into account the refusal of many lines cooperating, the routes are changing, and of course, we have to work through the Russian ports. In the Far East, it's Petropavlovsk on the Kamchatka and Vladivostok. Then it is landings and storage. The requirement for temperature is minus 18, and the fillet, the product that was mentioned was fillet, and it does not stand temperature fluctuation. That's why the transshipment should be in the cooled zones and then putting it into a container. Container is the most convenient means of storage and transporting, because that's the contemporary, the state of the art, and the market of the containers has increased by 10% in the past couple of years. And today we can talk about the railroads, both from the northwest to the Far East and back. And it's the same export that used to be hauled by sea. That's why the role of the container shipping is growing. And in the producers, what was good about it is high quality delivery. And there's not much harm caused by the departure of such companies as Maersk, because the Russian companies provide alternative routes now. And as of now, Northern Sea route is a good alternative route, but we should develop the Murmansk sea terminals, and the Far Eastern terminals are in a better state than those in the northwest. And the refrigerators should be constructed, high quality refrigerators, because the products that will be processed in the future will have stricter requirements as far as the temperature regime is concerned. So transportation of fish in the regions is done by either railroad or highways. Mr. Gorokhov and Dmitry Gorokhov from the Russian railroads. Good afternoon, dear friends. Slide one.
Хасан Мустафаевич уже сказал, первый, следующий. О цифрах.
Some figures were thrown to you. And indeed, the growth rate is 16%, and most of it in the Far East, 25%. It is hauling it by the standalone refrigerator, and we see how important the support from the state is, like subsidies for the transportation of fish. More than 50 railroad cars that received support from the state. When talking about fish transportation, we shouldn't but not talk about the requirements for the rolling stocks. As of now, there are 10,000 units. I'm talking about containers, and in 2002, the growth of 2,000 more are expected. I would like to note that the Russian railroads as a holding take part in the increase of the stock, and the Russian railroads has increased the fleet of the containers up to 500. It made it possible to develop the new logistics chains with the countries of the Central Asia and take part in the transportation in the Russian Federation. And this is an indication that this particular fleet is not excessive, and we can master new markets and master new products. So, Hasan Mustafaevich has mentioned that we have preserved the fast-track services of taking the products from the Far East, and we have introduced new routes from Ussurisk to Belarus, and we have 3 lines of trains that are on their way from the Far East to the northwest of Russia.
So talking about logistics, it has to be mentioned something about the technologies, what we use for the transportation of fish, and we are quite close to that, and we have to do that. We have been testing this type of transportation in St. Petersburg since 2019 using blockchain technology. And this year, we have connected 8 additional lines, and the slide specifies our plans for this year and next year. We hope that we will have an independent contract with all the calculations so that the interaction should be very transparent with our clients, and hopefully it will be reflected in smart fish logistics. I'd like also to note the importance of our cooperation with all the stakeholders of this process. I'd like to extend my gratitude to the association, and we see the huge work that they have done in the elaboration of the federal law, and we understand that -18 should be everywhere, and with a railway transport as well. So we need to structure the system of interaction and reaction systems, and also for the rolling stock movement. Also, when you have to approach the carriage, and sometimes with isothermic carriages, we have to react quite fast. So we will create this type of a single shop, and we will be able to resolve those issues in a fast way. Mr. Lichov talked about the electronic document importance and the need to do that, and together with the federal authorities, we are working on that. What will it give us? Well, it will be about paperless transportation, and also there will be fewer stages of various checks and inspections. It will also take less time for specific types of products to be transported. And we work with the Ministry of Digital Transformation so that the information systems like Mercury, Armosvita are connected to the necessary servers, and all the inspections that are currently conducted manually should be done electronically in future. So the machine will be checking the accuracy of the declaration, all the information that is specified by the client, and there will be a special database where all this information and data will be stored. And of course, we will spend less time thanks to that. Thank you for your attention. And if there are any questions, I will be ready to answer. Dmitry Vitalyevich, thank you. I listened to your speech, and I'd like to share something with you, some thoughts that I have. So we are talking now about railway transport, but a lot of fish is transported by car. But unfortunately, and it is a shame, with Mr. Lichov, we've discussed that with the representatives of Rossельхознадзор and Rosrybolovstva. Currently, we do not know how many cars and trucks are transporting fish. As for railway, each carriage can be found in the system, and we can look up the information about the date, about the volume of fish transported, and there is a huge gap in comparison with the car transport. So I'd like to call all of you, if you are calculating that, if you have this data and this information, please contact me so that we have certain reporting. And I've heard from the representatives of Far East and some other companies that by car about 60% of fish is being currently transported, if we compare that to the railway transport. But we cannot accurately compare all this data because we lack this information. And it can be even about one driver and his own car transporting fish, and we need a certain type of reporting. Continuing the topic of transportation, I'd like to pass the floor to General Director, Mr. Grechkin. This is the operator that is using the capacities of the Russian railways. Dear colleagues, good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the floor. Talking about the smart logistics, I'd like to say that our attitude towards it is that it is a flexible way to react to new challenges, both political and not political ones. For example, what is due to the pandemic that we have been facing. And there are certain examples of how businesses and authorities can resolve the problems quite fast. Some large lines, large companies have left our market. The colleagues have given us an example of Myers company, and mass media, they have covered this topic as a motive for having some difficulties. But we as operators do not see any serious problems in terms of fish transportation, and we cover all the needs with our containers for our clients, and we are working with existing lines and directions and now opening the new ones. And when we had to speed up the transportation of containers, both usual containers and refrigerator containers, now 90% has been produced and manufactured in China. And it was about zero custom duty, one of the measures that was introduced. And we are a part of FESCO company, and we have increased our fleet. We have about 4,000 containers, and up to the end of February, we will have additional 1,200 containers that will be working on our main regions. And you can see those regions on the map. And with the changes in the logistics of the northern basin, we saw quite active participation and active interest from the Southeastern Asian countries, like, for example, Vietnam, transportation into India and from India. And also new regions like Turkey are being very actively developed. And this is what we see in the market, and we try to adapt to that. The colleagues have mentioned that the cargo turnover has grown, and from the east we have seen large volumes of transportation of pollock, and we reported this growth, and there is room for improvement for this tool, and colleagues have mentioned that as well, adding additional items to pollock, additional items to the stock list, for example, adding pink salmon there. And this year we have seen new types of transportations, and the route from the Suez Channel has been used for this purpose, and we transported some products with the deep sea route, but now we are transporting that internally, domestically, throughout our territory, and we also earn money from this transit. That is how we are transporting this fish from the Far East, and it is one of the primary functions of this route. I'd like also to note one more feature. Because of the constraints that were introduced in 2019 in China, we use Hunchunan Mahali border point, and we see that railway transport can be quite competitive if we compare that with car transport, even with such short legs like 200 kilometers, and there is a huge potential for growth, and we need to unload the products like fruit, vegetables, to bring that to Primorie and also to some regions, coastal regions like Kamchatka. And now, with some small changes, opening of Machalina with new competences that will be introduced in order to import food stuff and also to recycle their containers, it will also help us to decrease the net cost of those operations. So this is briefly about what I wanted to say. Thank you very much for your attention. Andrei Yurievich, thank you very much. Of course, logistics of such level and scale, I mean the transportation and the storage of fish, should be monitored by the state. So I'd like to give the floor to the head of Rossельхознадзor from the Northwestern region, Mr. Yemtsev. Please. Good afternoon, dear participants, dear guests of the event. The agenda is quite relevant, is quite good. And as you mentioned, the logistics, the point of production, bringing that to end user, the delivery, all those points should be together. And I would like to talk about how oversight authorities are monitoring this work, what we are focusing on, which stages are we controlling, and where we put most of our efforts. I should like to say that logistics is smart when it is reflected in automated information systems of Rossельхознадзor. Since 2008, Rossельхознадзor has created and developed those systems. Argus system was the first one, and it has been developed in order to report the fish that was imported into Russia. And inspectors in 2008 at each border point, no matter whether we dealt with railway transport or car transport, they reported each batch, and veterinary control, all their requirements were included into the database. And since then, we have already included foreign companies, and that is how the history of those companies was created, and 14 years have passed. What has changed since then? We have the federal YETIS information system in the veterinary area, and there was a ruling of the government that confirmed its elaboration, its establishment, and you see that this system consists of a certain amount of subsystems. Each subsystem serves its purpose, but they are intervened with the digital network, and any company, production company, storage company, processing company, if it is not registered in the system, it does not have any right to operate. So, first of all, you have to get registered in this system. And where do we put this point? The SERBA system for registration for specific entities, and there the information, the data about each company, about each vessel is introduced there. The volume is also described. And if the inspection took place, then this data is also entered into the system. Also, the status, whether it is an importer, is import or export company, it is also specified. Further on, the main system, one of the main systems, Mercury, a lot of arrows that you can see here, their production, their storage, and what purpose does it serve? Well, it tracks the whole process, and here it is actually about the smart logistics, all the stages of the processes, how the documents are issued, veterinary control exercised, the way it comes to the end point, the necessary expertise. Another document is issued for specific refrigerators. So all manipulations, all the operations are registered in an online format, so we can track the time when we started the transportation of this production, and also the certificate of the product when it comes to this end point. So each movement is reflected there, specific person who introduces this data into the system, and you can see all this information inside. And we monitor this system across all the territory of the Russian Federation. We have the monitoring group in each of the regions working with this system, and we have the analytical specialists, analysts that are working with that. They know what they should pay attention to. It reflects the logistics, the number of the vehicle, the conditions of the storage. All this information is provided. And when we start monitoring the process, we see that there was a document issued for that at 10 a.m. and 5 hours after that, it has come to the storage facility in St. Petersburg, and 2 hours after that, another document is issued, and then it comes to Moscow. And we understand that this type of logistics is impossible. It takes more time, and then we put all our effort into that, and we try to resolve this situation with this company. There was an attempt to illegally legalize this production, and it was an illegal catching. And we inform the respected authorities and bodies, and then we eliminate this person from this system. We block them, so we take this type of measures, and that is how we clean this system, and I will talk about it a little bit later. So all these systems are integrated with the similar systems from other countries, including 16 countries integrated with Mercury with Chile, when they inform us that the vessel has left its Chilean port, and we can check the certificate anytime when the cargo comes in. This is about import, and we understand that the volume is dropping and the export is developing quite actively. And here the tracking is also very important. Many companies, many businesses would like to export their products into Eurasian Union, and the tracking system is one of the prerequisites for those operations. So if the state wants to export something, it has to receive our confirmation. It used to be about 30 days to check all the documents, all the applications, but now it has become faster.
Now the information system is launched, and the request could be seen over there, and all the subsystems are analyzed, and the user can see what raw materials has been used and what was the origin of the raw materials, what were the lab tests performed and the results of the lab tests. And one can also see the destination of the finished goods, and we can see that sometimes the incoming raw materials are 10 tons and the outgoing 20 tons, and we can make conclusions. And so we can say right away that if there is no trackability, then the requests would be rejected. And you can see over there that 54 requests have been logistics, and we explain that your logistics is not smart. We cannot understand where the resources have come from. And some of the transactions result in the increase of the volume. But why? And that's why the logistics should be reflected properly by the system. This system works and it is designed also to reduce transactional expenses and the users make use of it, and the logistics should be reflected in these information systems. Thank you. Thank you.
Давай в конце, хорошо? Спасибо.
Later, okay? So, and I would like to give a floor to Sergei Popov, Refrigerated Transportation Group's Eurosib SPB Transport Systems. He will be talking on the same matter. Thanks for the opportunity to have my talk. The colleagues have discussed at length the issues that the transportation industry faces, different factors that affect the transportation market of fish haulage. I would like to talk about the challenges that we face and the solutions that we as a multi-mode operator can offer to the market to provide safe, perishable products.
Отдельно хотел бы отметить
I would like to note on the growth of the market of the perishable goods. It's not only fish and not only about transportation of the refrigerator cars, but the other components, and the market has grown between 5 and up to 6 million times, and over the past 3 years the growth was 46%, from 700 to 1 million tons in 2021, and the growth is still there. And the companies report about the increase of the haulage of the fish products from the Far East. So the growth is there, and the growth of the market is a challenge, and the refrigerator operators should deal with that.
поэтому по,
That's why
скажем так, внешним факторам уже обсуждали выход Марса.
the external factors was the departure of Maersk company, which was offset by the introduction of new capacity of the refrigerator containers. But indeed, Maersk was quite a serious operator with a park, with a fleet of more than 1,000 units, and they were engaged in the haulage from South America to St. Petersburg and then to Siberia by railroad. Right now it is offset by the other sea line, but the sea lines that are operators and to ensure the turnover of their equipment, they do not provide the containers to the market as Maersk did, and this generates the demand in containers at the market that should be met. A few words on the internal drivers for the market. There is a reduction in some sections, which using the obsolete rolling stock. Some of the rolling stocks were fabricated in the 90s, which are technically and morally obsolete. And another external factors I forgot to mention is the COVID constraints in China. And we have an internal growth because there is a shift from cars to containers. There are thermos cars, and when we are talking about the safety haulage, the thermos car not provide the full range of safety. And talking about the predictions, we expect the market will still be growing as a result of scrapping the obsolete cars, railroad cars. They will be scrapped by 2030. And
Ввод на рынок достаточно ограничен и
the introduction of
серьезного воздействия.
new
Что касается дополнительных факторов,
cars is limited.
сохранения программы субсидирования и ее пролонгации на следующий год, коллеги говорили о возможности ее расширения таких номенклатур,
Are
как
expected in the prolongation of the program of herring and
тарифы, к сожалению, у нас
salmon, and the tariffs for the refrigerated and universal versatility containers are different. And of course, with the refrigerated containers being higher.
субсидирование
So subsidies of the fees by railroad, it's quite an important step that could affect the freight haulage by automobile transport as well. I would like to present our solution for the market. It is a Lego construct that is made up of a few modules. Eurosib is a company with an assets, and we have a network of container
начинаем мы
networks and container trains, and
момента, который
we have entered the market at the critical moment
также находится на
and
дефиците, это энергия.
with when the power was at deficiency.
Решением для
That's why the primary solution for the market was energy module of ours. It is the most powerful at the market, and it can generate 200 kilowatts, and it can power 200 containers, and the refrigerated train could be knocked up from those cars, and with the weight of 57 tons.
те перевозки, которые сейчас есть в компании Eurosib, они у нас
So,
начинаются с перевозки
the
также
Eurosib transportation containers are
контейнерных поездов. Если
also added up with the dry containers,
парк Eurosib текущий
and the total fleet
платформы является
has 3,600
сетка наших поездов.
fitting flat cars, and the network is more than 50 directions.
Интеграция решений
That's why the integration of the power solution and the containers that we will operate will be provided by the container trains that are operated at the network.
Что касается логистики, у нас средняя точка в стране это
Talking about the logistics, the midpoint is Novosibirsk, and we have a major terminal in Novosibirsk. It's a full-cycle terminal. We provide a full range of services over there, and it is the reference point for haulage of the frozen fish from the Far East to Siberia, and to be followed up by the distribution in the regions.
Еще хотел бы отметить тот факт, что у нас сейчас происходит реконструкция нашего
I would like to note that we are performing the refurbishment of the terminal, and we are expanding the access roads, and we will be able to handle 4 trains, and the throughput will be increased by 1.5 times. As far as the smart solutions that we offer, the mega module is part of the more comprehensive solution,
harbour.
It is with the innovative smart carriage Barbara, and
Мы
the
интегрировали
weight capacity will be 74 tons. We have integrated this platform into the anti-vandal execution, and the cables are well protected, and we have reviewed our new solutions, and as a result, our colleagues turning to us.
мониторинг энергопотребления этих контейнеров.
One of the solutions is power consumption monitoring. We can track the power consumption and take decisions based on it. Our refrigerated containers will be fitted with
который обеспечивает удаленный мониторинг через 3G связь, 3G, 4G,
to perform the
постоянного полного
tracking
контроля температурной цепи,
continuous monitoring of the temperature, and to provide control for the containers both at the terminals and en route by railroad and at sea. Additionally, I would like to state that smart logistics is the type of logistics with the maximum range of assets, not only to control the unit safe, but to provide fast response, then engaging contractors, subcontractors. That's why separate smart solutions are good, but comprehensive smart solutions like containers, terminals, staff, subsidiaries are the links of one smart logistics chain. That's why our company is prepared to support the law and the continuous refrigerating chain, and it's only that kind of approach that can provide the high-quality products delivered to the end users, and we believe that the employment of this solution will be good for the industry. Thank you. We keep talking about the refrigerated containers because the role of the refrigerated cars has been reduced as a result of them getting obsolete. However, a number of the Russian companies have rejuvenated the production of the refrigerated cars, Russian refrigerators, and we have a director of the Русский Refrigerator. And we design, produce, and operate the refrigerator cars, and we address the issue of the refrigerator cars getting older. And for quite a long time, there was no production of the cars, and as far as the design is concerned, they were mostly done in the 70s. That's why most of the haulage of the perishable goods has shifted towards refrigerated containers, and without reducing their role, diminishing their roles, I would like to say that the refrigerating cars could still be employed. Conceptually, it is something that looks like the US stand-alone refrigerating car. There is a refrigerating unit and the air duct, etc. The car is both technically and commercially is available. We started operation from February, and we address a very complicated issue. We have taken wine from Moscow to Vladivostok, and there were cooled cheese, and of course we used to transport frozen food. We do not have any complaints about the car. There are some minor ideas of how to increase the smoothness of its operation, and the decision has been taken to start the batch production starting from December. The refrigerated car can provide guarantees for safely taking refrigerated cargo from one point in Russia to another, and we can provide our partners the possibility to monitor the parameters of the operation of the equipment. Initially, we were convinced that the car maintains the needed temperature mode, and we provide access to the temperature mode to all who are interested in that. Most of the partners are willing, and we have an interest displayed by the regulators, by the oversight bodies, and we have nothing to conceal it. We make it available. We cooperate with two partners on cinematics, and we have expanded the capacity of the refrigerating equipment based on the telemetry. Could you list through the slides?
Нет. Следующий слайд. Можно, кто у нас руководит?
Не, лучше после следующей тогда.
Another one?
После следующий слайд.
Пожалуйста. Да, но здесь на самом деле перечислена вся начинка, которая у нас есть.
Well, here are the insides. Here are the insides of the refrigerated car.
Хорошо. А красный это назад. Все, я понял. Почему 6 датчиков по
Why 6 sensors of the cargo hold? The reason is that we would like to know the temperature at different sides of the car, and the warm or cold air is delivered to all the parts of the car hold. And there are also two sensors for the ambient air. The fire sensors, I cannot expect that it will get fired, that it will be ignited, but anyway, there are provisions for it. The sensors of the doors closed, because the reason is that we want to not only to prevent the penetration into the engine room, but we do want to control that there are no
датчик уровня топлива. Мы знаем, что наш бак
gaps between the door and the walls to affect the temperature. We know that it is possible for the car to make it from one end of the country to another, and there is sufficient fuel endurance, but anyway, there is a sensor of the fuel. GPS tracking is also there. Sometimes it is convenient to know where the car is, and it is GSM and Iridium systems. We have never been using Iridium.
Передается это на
And all this information is communicated to the operator. It could be a mobile device, and one provider has a mobile and the other one has also access. Our operators can see the fleet to control remotely, and the clients need only the parameters he is interested in, not all the 250 parameters available.
Besides, colleagues have developed for Android an application that allows you, when you're close to the carriage, you see what is happening with the temperature inside this carriage. And there are some representatives of oversight authorities who got interested in this. Moreover, both software can be seen as alternatives to one another, and we have certificates for both of them. We can use both of them, and we will do that. They can be connected by API through one of the state system of the reporting and cargo control. What is it all for? We would like to eliminate the human factor and to eliminate this risk, because it is not always that we have a person who can turn the refrigerator off, and the qualities are lost in this process. And as for the costs, if we eliminate a human factor, then we are able to decrease the costs as well. Now we do all the work remotely. It looks like following. In the evening, we give the information about the carriage, and we perform the inspection, the check. After that, the client comes. Special application is used to send the photo of the cargo, and the application helps us to verify geolocation that it was exactly this point, this carriage. We say OK to the client. Client closes the door. We see that on the sensor. And after that, after some time, we have seen that the door sensor, when it is marked in red, we understand that something goes wrong with the door. Then we take a photo, and we see that there was a mistake made when loading the cargo, and that is why we saw this red light, and the temperature was going, the warmth was going out of the carriage, and then the guarantee letter is provided, and we change from -18 to -24, and that is how we are able to save the cargo. And it is not a fairy tale, it's an ordinary procedure for the 21st century, and it is not performed by a brigade of engineers. It is done by the application in a smartphone. So basically, that is it about the smart carriage. Thank you, Maxim Viktorovich. The only representative from the Russian company like this, Maxim Dmitrovich, has mentioned Advantum company, the telematics, and Mr. Vasily Panov, Deputy CEO of Advantum company. Please tell us about the control of the temperature regimes when transporting and storing fish products. Well, almost everything was told by Mr. Korneev in terms of how the equipment works. But I would like to speak generally about the control of temperature when transporting fish products. This is not my first slide. My name is Vasily Panov, as I was already introduced by our moderator. We are running out of time, and I will be quite brief. So I'd like to talk about the basic problem when transporting fish products, and it is the lack of compliance with the temperature regime. And previous speakers understood that there is a special work that can be performed in order to control the temperature, but we do not have the continuous chain that would control that continuously at all the stages. And the loss of control entails problems, and it decreases the quality of cargoes. And it also entails financial and operational losses. The current situation in the industry is such that the reporting is done by loggers that are put into the cargo, and they are the only ones that provide this data and this information. Of course, now we have the state-of-the-art IT software solutions that allow us to have this information to control cargoes, but in the fish industry, it is more like an exception. There are very few of them. What does the ideal picture look like? As of today, some sections of the way are controlled by the modern IT solutions, but there is no unified cloud platform. This platform could allow us, with state-of-the-art equipment and software solutions, to control the whole chain. And we, as manufacturers of IT solutions, do have this experience because we have walked along this path with the majority of the state retail chains, and thanks to our solutions, we helped our clients to totally control the temperature when transporting products and various type of goods from the delivery point to the end users, and they have saved a lot, preserving with that the quality. And the transporters and the owners of the storage facilities also have some advantages. The fines have decreased. The equipment has been strictly controlled. A lot has been mentioned by the railway transport and refrigerator cars. The installments are connected there to these blocks and to this system, and that is how the transporter can control hundreds of parameters, and they can eliminate those problems in an online format. And the most serious problem is the incorrect temperature regime. In order for that to function properly and correctly, we offer this solution. This equipment can be installed in any type of transport. It can be a railway carriage, it can be the car, it works online. So if you can get the connection to the internet, it will be working all right. And up to 10 wireless sensors are connected to this device. All the data is captured and then transferred subsequently when there is an access to the internet. And this is the hardware component. Now turning to the next part. What do we need it for? This is a cloud platform that enables us to control temperature regime of the cargo in an online regime. If a customer is a member of our system, a transporter company can track this cargo, can see what is happening with the cargo, and this is what helps us to structure the interaction between the stakeholders, and their reactions can be quite fast, and the structural work is quite simple, and you always see who actually is to blame if something goes wrong. I can additionally say that besides the control system for the temperature regime, we allow us to have a continuous freezing line and chain, and it helps us to see what is happening with the cargo at each point of this chain to get connected to the system. Is quite simple. We just adjust the flow of information and we provide an access. It takes about 1 to 2 days. Besides the temperature control in the framework of our digital platform, we have a possibility to control some other parameters: optimization of the car network for the car transport, and also the fuel control where it is necessary. This digital product helps us to control it quite efficiently, this type of fish products, for all the stakeholders. In conclusion, I'd like to say that in the framework of working with the state's retail networks and chains, we have connected to the system about 40,000 transport types, and this is what helps us to efficiently manage this chain. And I think that jointly with you, we can scale it up to the chains related to fish products. That is briefly it. Vasily Yurievich, thank you very much. It's quite interesting. So, logistics of fish products in marketplaces is something which is quite congenial to them. Rossельхозbank, please, Evgeny Ivanovich, the floor is yours. Thank you, Mikhail Yurievich. I'd like to welcome all the guests and participants of the forum. And the entry group, probably you saw the QR code, and I will tell you about that and the framework of the development of ecosystem in our Rossельхозbank. And one of them is marketplace of the pharma industry. Our own, Своё родное, is available to be downloaded. And please show us the video of how it works. This marketplace is a social project aimed at rendering support to local farmers, also those who produce fish products. This service is available across all the territory of the Russian Federation. And what are we doing there? A number of agricultural producers, with an emphasis on the fish producers, are facing a number of tasks. It's not only about producing fish products, but you have to sell it. And our marketplace is aimed at B2C market development. If we talk about the transportation and delivery of fish products on the local level, the solution is the following one. Manufacturer, a producer, has his or her own logistics, but there are certain periods, for example, right before the new year, there are too many orders, too many applications, and then we are already connected to this process. We also cooperate with a number of courier services. They do not provide a unified solution economically. So our task exactly is to help our manufacturers, our producers, our Russian fish producers to resolve this issue with the delivery. We work with courier companies. There are many of them. Some of them are closing down, some of them are opening up, but we are emphasizing a number of aspects: the price, the cost, and the delivery conditions. And also we have some products that are not perishable, conserved one. There we help our producers to sell this product on federal level. Currently, we have some companies that allow us to bring this product from the counter to the table. Our own farmery, this is another platform that is free of charge for manufacturers, for farmers, and then in their own account they can get connected to some service, delivery services, online payments, and so on and so forth. B2C market, this is about it. We also launched another project. It has happened this year. It is quite relevant in the HoReCa segment in restaurant business. We help to find your own manufacturer. Currently in Russia, fish products are one of the complicated category of products. It's quite difficult to find high-quality fish products with good price. So we've launched this project that gives the restaurants the possibility to find their manufacturer and vice versa. Just briefly, this is it. And if you have any questions, I will be glad to answer them. And I would like to emphasize once more, then you can use your phone and use this QR code to support our local farmers. Evgeny, yes, we will do that. Thank you for this interesting report. This is it for today. I'd like to thank our speakers for informative reports, and we have to leave the room already. Thank you very much. So the questions can be asked later on. As far as I understand, you have a question to Rossельхознадзор. Okay, thank you. Goodbye.